So one of the main points of emphasis in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are obviously the Paradox Pokemon, and with the reveal of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC came the reveal of two new Paradox Pokemon that are based on legendaries. Walking Wake, who is based on Suicune, and Iron Leaves, who is based on Virizion. These legendary paradoxes are obviously amazing, but what would it be like if even more legendary Pokemon got paradox forms? Well, in this video, I am here to explore exactly that, as we are going to take a look at several designs of my very own that show us what it could look like if more legendary Pokemon got the paradox treatment. So today's video is being presented to you all today thanks in part to today's wonderful sponsor, Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Simply put, these are subscription boxes that send you tons of awesome treats that come straight from Japan. And I get them every month myself because they come with some really yummy stuff. These month's boxes are also especially special because they're Sakura themed, and these boxes are going all out on the Sakura celebration. In case you didn't know, it's officially Sakura or cherry blossom season in Japan, and these boxes give you a taste of what that's like, with lots of Sakura and spring themed treats, like these peach flavored Kit Kats from the Tokyo Treat box, or these Sakura shortbread cookies from the Sakura Co box. The Sakura Co box also comes with a really nice piece of tableware each month, and this time it is Sakura themed too. These are honestly the boxes to get if you want to see what Japanese food and snacks are like, so if you would like to get a box for yourself, you can do so with the link in the description below, and Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co are also running a special Sakura themed promotion which you can check out with that link too. It even directly supports the channel by picking up a box, so if you enjoy what I do here, consider checking that out. And a big thank you once again to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co for their support. So I've actually got a bunch of designs to show you guys today, because I've actually created several legendary paradox designs already prior to the making of this video. You may or may have not seen them, but in previous videos I already featured paradox designs for Mewtwo, who I called Iron Clone, and Latios and Latias, who I called Iron Jet. Likewise, I also made a video recently talking about what it could be like if we do actually end up getting paradox versions of the rest of the legendary beasts and Swords of Justice, since like I said, we already got Walking Wake for Suicune and Iron Leaves for Virizion, and this is what I ultimately ended up coming up with for those ideas. If you want to learn more about these designs and what they have to offer, you can do so by checking out their videos on my channel or with the card on screen, because while I wanted to feature them in this video since they are paradox versions of legendary Pokemon that I have created, this video is actually more so focused on some new designs that I've created specifically for this video, namely paradox versions of the legendary birds. I decided to go ahead and highlight the legendary birds in this video because something really interesting happened with Walking Wake's design in particular, who is a legendary beast, that probably should have happened with the legendary birds instead. And that is that Walking Wake is obviously very dinosaur-like in nature. It went from being a beast in Suicune to a dinosaur raptor-like monster. And that's honestly something, if we're going by real-world connections and real-world evolution, that should have happened to the legendary birds instead, because it was birds that evolved from dinosaurs and not mammalian dog, cat, beast things. And given that the legendary birds are sitting right there from the generation prior to the beasts in Kanto, I thought this was a really interesting choice, and so I decided to go ahead and highlight the birds here with their own paradox forms, but in an interesting and unique way that is meant to sort of reference and have fun with the interesting dynamic between Walking Wake and Suicune's designs. I've also got to give a quick shout out to the artist who drew the artwork of these designs that you're going to see in this video from this point forward, and that would be none other than Deims Fakemon. They did a great job with these designs you're about to see, and you can find them on either Twitter or Instagram, so be sure to check them out with the links in the description. With that said though, let's go ahead and actually get into the legendary birds, starting first and foremost with Articuno. Now, obviously we're going to start with Articuno because it's got that number 1 in its name, and for the Paradox version of this Pokemon, this is what I came up with. Now, like I said, this might not be what you're expecting for a Paradox version of Articuno, but it is directly based on and is meant to be sort of a reference to the relationship between Walking Wake being more of a dinosaur, while Suicune is a mammalian dog cat-like beast that is not remotely related, at least in real-world terms. So the theme of this design, as well as one of the other designs we're going to get into a little bit later, is since it should have been the legendary birds instead of the beasts that were evolving from dinosaur-like Paradox versions of themselves, at least realistically anyway, I decided to make the Paradox versions of the birds more beast-like, like we should see with the beasts instead of the birds. So basically, it's an opposite type of scenario to the legendary beasts, which results in this more beast-like version of Articuno, who I have named Frigid Fangs. Now, Frigid Fangs is an ice-water type, and the reason why I have chosen this type combination is because it's meant to sort of once again represent the fact that these are very much not bird Pokemon like their descendants eventually will become, giving it that secondary water type instead of flying to represent one of the other planes of existence, if you will, like the sky where the flying type Articuno resides, except this time it's just not the sky because this Pokemon is not a flying type, which is, like I said, the message we're trying to get across. And while this is admittedly a more of a unique inspiration and approach for a Paradox form, just like Walking Wake was for Suicune, I feel like the bestial theme actually works pretty well with Articuno. So if Frigid Fangs were to ever be a real thing in any sort of capacity, it is actually something that I would be okay with despite how different and unique it is. Finally, I also want to address the origin of its name. It mostly is pretty self-explanatory, but once again, I wanted to emphasize the fact that this is not a bird like the legendary birds that this Pokemon comes from. That's where the fangs part of this name comes from. It's not only because this Pokemon does indeed have fangs, but it's also because birds obviously do not have fangs. So it's just another one of those things that subtly emphasizes the fact that this is not a bird, despite being based on a bird Pokemon, because the overarching theme of what is going on here is the huge difference in inspiration between the more bestial Frigid Fangs and the bird-like Articuno. However, that is obviously just one member of the 3 legendary birds, so let's move on to bird number 2 in this category, Zapdos. Now, with Zapdos, I decided to go ahead and make its Paradox form a future Paradox form instead of a past one, simply because I wanted to give you guys a taste of what it could look like if the birds got either version of a Paradox form, whether it was a past form or a future form. And while I have no doubt that a more bestial looking Zapdos could be really cool, I feel like its future form, which I have dubbed Iron Lightning, looks just as awesome. Now, if you have watched my other videos where I've created other future Paradox form Pokemon, you would know that one thing I personally like to do when creating these more futuristic Pokemon is to give them a little more variance in their design instead of making them by and large robots like we see in the official games. It's a common opinion that the future Paradox forms just pretty much being robots is kind of unfortunate because it pretty much doesn't change a whole lot about the Pokemon. So what I have decided to do with my own future Paradox Pokemon and what I've done with Iron Lightning is to not only make their bodies more robotic like the actual Paradox Pokemon, but give them some of that futuristic energy to also help make up parts of their body similar to what we see in Miraidon, because even though Miraidon is a box art legendary Pokemon, it is still a Paradox Pokemon itself. I personally feel like this small tweak to the philosophy of the future Paradox Pokemon would go a long way in making them a lot cooler, and I personally feel like Iron Lightning is a good example of that, because Zapdos is looking pretty dang cool in a futuristic form, if I do say so myself, to the point where I would not even mind if the legendary birds got the future treatment instead of the past treatment, if it meant they were going to look something like this. And since Zapdos is already an electric type, obviously, and it is becoming more futuristic and robotic, I feel like Electric Steel just kinda makes sense. It would be the epitome of a futuristic type of Pokemon, and I feel like Zapdos embodies that really well, so Electric Steel is what I went with, and for its name, it's pretty straightforward. Lightning comes from the fact that it's an electric type, and iron obviously comes from the fact that not only is it a steel type, but it is a future Paradox Pokemon, because all future Paradox Pokemon to this point have the word iron in their name. So what do you guys think? If we were to get Paradox versions of the legendary birds, would you rather have past versions that look a little bit more like Frigid Fangs, or future versions that look more like Iron Lightning? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, but let's go ahead and take a look at our Paradox version of Moltres to see if that might not sway your decision a little bit. Moltres is obviously the third and final legendary bird, and I have decided to give it the past treatment as well, just like Articuno, because personally, and just like a lot of other people, I prefer the past Paradox Pokemon to the future ones, and I wanted to see what it would be like if we gave Moltres this more bestial form like we did with Articuno. So with that said, I would like you guys to meet Blazing Bark, my version of a Paradox form of Moltres. Now once again, very unique, very different, and going along with this opposite sort of inspiration compared to what the legendary beasts are getting with their Paradox forms. But ultimately, I think it does a good job of communicating that concept. Not only does it do enough to look like it is Moltres, but it also has that very bestial look, and one that is very distinctive as well, which can help it to be more of its own Pokemon, which I also think is very important if this Pokemon, like all of the other Paradox Pokemon, are going to be considered their own individual Pokemon species instead of just a form. I have also given it the Fire Ground type, and once again, this is meant to represent the fact that it is very much not a bird at this point in its evolution, because it is a ground type Pokemon because it resides on the ground, which is one of those other planes of existence like water for Frigid Fangs, or flying, aka the sky, for the actual legendary birds. And that is also where its name comes from as well, Blazing referring to its fire type, and Bark because it's obviously very dog-like, and barking is something that birds don't exactly do. So once again, we're just pounding it home that this, even though it's the ancestor of a bird, is very much not a bird itself, and that's the point and that's the fun of it. With that being said though, that is what I got for you guys for possible Paradox forms of the legendary birds. Like I said, be sure to let me know in the comments below which version of a legendary bird Paradox form you would prefer to see. The more beast-like past forms, or the more robot Miraidon-like future forms like I showed with Iron Lightning. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new as well, because it really helps out. And thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I will be back with another new video very soon as well, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.